Hi, my name is Kristen and this is Kristen Craves Books. So I was looking at the new releases that are coming out for the rest of the year, and November and December are slower, but that is typical. But October, there are a ton. October 3rd in general is like a huge release day. Probably the biggest release day we've had so far this year. I don't know why, but most of the books I'm going to talk about today do come out on October 3rd. So we're just going to dive right into this because I'm going to lose my voice. I can feel it already. So we're going to start with the two that I had ALCs of from NetGalley, so thanks to them. The first one is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. This is my first book from Alex E. Harrow, and I know that a lot of her stuff is kind of hit or miss for people, and people have favorites and then are disappointed by others. I loved this. I had no idea what to expect going into it. All I knew it was like a Southern Gothic horror, though I would use the word horror very loosely. It's more about a sentient house where you're following a character named Opal who is supporting her brother. Her mother has passed away and she just wants to get her brother out of this small town. He's very smart. She wants to send him off to university and just get him out of here, but she keeps getting called to this Starling House. She sees it in her dream. She's compelled by it. She ends up going there, meeting the last living caretaker. It's like a family house, and it's Arthur Starling, and they have a connection. She has a connection to the house. The house really wants her there, but Arthur knows that it's bad for her, pushes her away, but through a series of circumstances, she ends up being the housekeeper for Starling House, and everything unravels from there. And one that I actually just finished this morning as I'm filming is After the Forest by Kella Woods. This is really, really interesting. It is a Hansel and Gretel retelling, but not at the moment that they are in the witch and the gingerbread house and all that stuff. It's actually 20 years later. So we see how that event has affected them, especially their relationship, and how they both responded differently. This is a witchy story, so if you're looking for that, this is a different take. That might be a good one to check out. Super atmospheric. We are in the same village that the kids ran away from when they got lost in the woods and with the witch and everything, and how the village has responded to them as they've grown up and the aftermath of all of that. She does still bake gingerbread and sells this gingerbread to make a living to support them. It's really interesting. There's a lot of good side characters. Again, super atmospheric. I don't want to talk too much more than that. Just trust me. Definitely worth checking out. I will say that the first half is definitely slower paced than the second half, but it's worth it. I loved all the setup as well and just getting to know these characters. So yeah, highly recommend that one. Now onto the million books coming out on October 3rd that I haven't read yet. The first one is an anthology, and this is Out There Screaming, and it's edited by Jordan Peele. Yes, that Jordan Peele, the director of Get Out and Nope. And this is an anthology of new black horror. And there's some favorite authors of mine that have contributed to this collection, and authors whose stuff I've been meaning to check out for ages. So P. Jelly Clark's in here, Tananarive Due, N.K. Jemisin, which is fantastic, Nadia Okorafor, Rebecca Roanhorse. So a lot of names that you're going to recognize, and some that are new to me as well. And it says that it's a masterclass in horror, and like his spine-chilling films, its stories prey on everything we think we know about our world and redefine what it means to be afraid. So fantastic. Then we have Edenville by Sam Rebelline, and this sounds like kind of a horror version of the movie Pleasantville. So it is following a man who published his debut novel and it just didn't go over well. He ends up getting a job offer to teach like a writing course at a college or university, and it's in a town where his wife grew up, or his girlfriend grew up, and she is reluctant to go back there, but she goes with him because it's a good opportunity for him. And at first it's really pleasant and everything's going well, and then they soon realize there's something not quite right about this community that they've moved to. So it's giving Pleasantville, Don't Worry Darling, those kind of vibes, and I love that kind of setup. So yeah, definitely one I'm going to try and get to at some point this fall. We have some sci-fi. I do like sci-fi in the fall, so I'm excited to have a couple that are coming out this month. The first one is The Ginbot of Shantiport by Samit Bazu, and this is interesting. It actually follows this girl, and her sibling is the monkey that you see on the cover. I'm not quite sure how that works. It says her brother is a small monkey bot with a big attitude and bigger ambitions. So I think our main character, Lena, wants to stay on this planet, and I think it's been colonized, and she is not trying to fight against that too much because she just wants to be in her safe bubble. her brother has bigger dreams for them. But then she ends up in a situation where she has to retrieve an artifact for a billionaire, and I think this artifact can change reality, and I think everything just kind of goes up in flames after that. So it sounds really interesting and different. I'm at the point now, if you tell me a book is comparable to anything by Aaron A. Craig, I will read it, and that is the case from Before the Devil Knows You're Here by Autumn Krause. And this is like a dark folktale, and it's actually based on Johnny Appleseed and Paul Bunyan, which is so different. Definitely have never read anything like that before. And it says that it centers a fierce Mexican-American poet on a quest to rescue her brother. It's also historical. It's set in 1836, and we're following a character whose entire family has died, and all she has left is her brother, and in a series of events her brother is kidnapped, and she actually teams up with Paul Bunyan to save her brother. So that could be either really good or very strange in a bad way, but we will see how I feel in the end. So it just makes sense to have your dark academia novel come out in October, and the one that I have here is Curious Ties by Pascal Lassalle. And this actually follows a teen mage, which I love. If you add some wizards into it, that just makes me even more excited. It says a teen mage who must unravel the truth behind the secret society that may have involved her classmates' deaths. So it sounds like pretty much your classic dark academia setup, but you add mages into it, it makes it that much more interesting to me. One that I'm hoping to have started by the time that I post this video is A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand. I do have an ALC of this one from Libro Femme, and apparently this is the only authorized book set in the world of A Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, so that's really interesting. This follows a playwright named Holly who decides that she wants to take time to just write. And in order to do that, she decides to rent the house from A Haunting in Hill House, and she brings her girlfriend along with her who is very resistant but is supportive, so joins her. And I think throughout the course of this month, a lot of friends come over, like a lot of actors visit, and they have ghosts of their own, and then what you might expect starts to happen. So I'm very intrigued to see how that all plays out. An author whose books I always put on this list anytime she has a new one coming out, but I've yet to read, even though I think I'll like her stuff, is Ashley Winstead. Her newest book is Midnight is the Darkest Hour. And this is a gothic southern thriller, which is something that appeals to me, about a killer haunting a small Louisiana town where two outcasts, the preacher's daughter and the boy from the wrong side of the tracks, hold the key to uncovering the truth. So I don't know if this is going to be the first one of hers I get to, because so many are on my TBR, and I'm just not the biggest thriller reader these days. But something about her books really does call to me, so yeah, this does sound like an interesting premise. It also says that it's an examination of the ways we've come to expect love, religion, and stories to save us, the lengths we go in order to take back power, and the monstrous work of being a girl in this world. So yeah, that makes me even more excited about the idea of it. A fantasy book that seems to be getting a lot of hype already is A Hurricane Wars by Thea Gonzon. So the tagline for this says, "The heart is a battlefield," which you know just means that this is rivals to lovers. And it follows a character who is an orphan, and she grows up among soldiers who I believe are part of the rebellion, and she never tells anybody that she can feel that she has magic coursing through her blood, and this is a magic that is believed to have been wiped out years ago, so she's keeping it a secret. And then it also follows Prince Alaric, who has been raised as a weapon for his father's army, and he's never been defeated before, he's never been bested until he meets our main character, and they meet on the battlefield, and they are just like a perfect match for one another, and they know that in order to end this war, they have to come together, but they obviously have a lot of forces working against them. It says here that it's an exquisite fantasy brimming with unforgettable characters, sizzling enemies to lovers' romance, and richly drawn world. So I feel like that's all we look for in a fantasy like this. I'm always excited to find a new YA horror that appeals to me, and this one is The Forest Demands Its Due by Kosoko Jackson. And this is apparently A Lessons in Vengeance, which is dark academia, so I wonder if there's dark academia vibes in this, meets The Taking of Jack Livingston. It's a YA horror / fantasy set in dark academia about a queer black teen who discovers the sinister history of his boarding school and the corrupt powers behind it all. This is very interesting to me because as much as I love dark academia, it can be difficult to find diversity within the genre, so this is one that I really hope works for me and gets some attention because I just love the idea of that. I love following a corrupt boarding school. Some of my favorite dark academias have that vibe. So it follows a character named Douglas who goes to this boarding school, and a fellow student is murdered, but everybody wakes up the next morning and doesn't remember it except for him and one of his friends who happens to be the groundkeeper's son, and they are determined to bring this to light and to figure out how this happened. And it says, for the first time in his life, Douglas might have a chance to grasp one thing he always felt was missing: power. But if he's not careful, he will find out that power has a tendency to corrupt absolutely everything. Chills. Okay, if I don't love this next book, I don't know what's going on with the world, because in theory this should be my perfect book and like a favorite book of all time, because it has two of my favorite things ever. It's a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but with witches. Does that not sound perfect? And this is the Scandalous Confessions of Lydia Bennet, witch. So Lydia Bennet, one of the sisters in Pride and Prejudice. There's cats on the cover. This just looks perfect. It's by Melinda Taub, and it says it's a witchy reimagining of Pride and Prejudice, told from the perspective of the troublesome and, according to her, much maligned youngest Bennet sister, Lydia. So really what this is like a memoir from Lydia Bennet, writing down and telling her perspective of everything that went down in Pride and Prejudice, which just is amazing. It's full of enchantment, intrigue, danger, and boundless magic. And it has all the irrelevant wit, strength, romance of Pride and Prejudice, while offering a highly unexpected redemption arc for the wildest Bennet sister. So I need to read that. I need to love it. I know that it's Halloween season and it's October and we just want those creepy vibes right now, but I have to include a holiday romance that just looks adorable, and it's called Love in Winter Wonderland by Abiola Bello, and it's set in a bookstore. So it's like You've Got Mail, but set around the holidays. And it says that it's a Christmas love story set in a London black-owned bookshop. And it's just following these two characters. I think one has worked there for a long time and one is a newer employee, and then I don't know that they get along at first because they're very different. But when they hear that the bookstore is going to have to be closed, it's not surviving, they work together to save it. Pretty classic setup, but one that always works for me, especially around the holiday season, because it's just sweet and charming and adorable, and I just need to read it as soon as Halloween is over. This next one might be a surprise, considering I read from this author before and really didn't like the book, but I'm still willing to give them a try because I like the writing and this is intriguing. It is called The Dead Take the A Train by Cassandra Khaw, who's the author I'm talking about, and it's also written by Richard Kadri, and they've teamed up to deliver a dark new story with magic, monsters, and mayhem, perfect for fans of Neil Gaiman and Joe Hill. So it's set in the underbelly of New York, and it follows a character named Julie who has a lot of magic throughout her body, and she's kind of keeping it a secret, but she's doing some gigs and she's just trying to survive, and she ends up summoning a god that is seeking revenge. And it says that her power grabs set off a deadly chain of events that puts her closest friends and the entire world directly in the path of annihilation. Again, this is one that could either be fantastic or just not work for me at all, but I'm willing to try it. I think we have 3 more for October 3rd. We're getting through it. We're doing it. So the next one is When Ghosts Call Us Home by Katya D. Baccara, and this is a haunting in Hill House meets found footage horror, which I know a lot of people have been loving that concept recently. It's an edge-of-your-seat thriller that explains the power of family ties and the trauma that lurks there. This follows 2 sisters who starred in this horror movie when they were children, and it's actually just footage that the older sister took of her sharing these really horrific stories with her younger sister and pretending that there's something devilish or haunted going on in the house, and her reactions to that. And then this movie got a really big cult following, and we're following the sisters as they're adults, and their relationship is strained, and they're still big fan culture around this movie and how that affects them, and trying to unpack whether what happened in that footage was real or if the older sister just made it up. And I think that's a really cool concept. Now we definitely need some bit more fantasy on this list. So the next one we have is The Scarlet Alchemist by Kylie Lee Baker, and this follows a character who is obviously an alchemist, and it is her dream to be able to create gold and gems for the wealthy that helps them to stay young, but she is just trying to survive, so she is doing more illegal stuff, and part of that is raising the dead. And she ends up going to this academy, I think, and being trained and taking an exam to be an alchemist for the royal family, and she has to compete to do this. And I think this was a pretty intense competition. I love a good competition story, so that can be really different, especially since we're focusing on alchemy, which is not something I have read that much about. And then she catches the eye of the prince, who knows that she can raise the dead and wants to use that to his advantage. So we will see how that all plays out, but that sounds good. A lot of buzz for that book already. One that I don't think I'm going to read anytime soon, but I want to put on your radar and on this list because I know a lot of people are excited about this and love this author. This is Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. And while this seems to be a standalone, it is set in the same world of Kingdom of the Wicked, which I haven't read, but I know people adore. I am under the impression that you could probably read this one without having read those, especially because this is the adult debut. But I just wanted to put that out there in case you didn't know that. So I don't know too much about the book. Honestly, I don't know much about Kingdom of the Wicked either, but I just wanted to put that out there in this case you love this author and this world and you somehow missed that this book was coming. And the cover is gorgeous, and I am open to eventually getting to Kingdom of the Wicked. It's just not on my immediate TBR, so yeah, just wanted to shout that one out. We are finally moving on to October 10th, and I am losing my voice, but we're gonna get through this. And this is one I actually have a finished copy of, thanks to Angry Robot Books. Anytime they send me books now, I scream. I'm so excited about their entire list, and this one is The Bone Roots by Gabriella Houston. First of all, this cover is gorgeous. It says two mothers, each trying to protect her daughter, but only one of them can succeed, and only one of them knows why. So we're getting some family stuff in here, and definitely some secrets. You know what I love about Angry Robot Books? They put file under here so you know what you're gonna get. It says Tree of Life, Mother Issues, Outfoxed, Unraveling Secrets. So those are little buzzwords to get you excited about it. It's a dark and mesmerizing fantasy exploring Slavic myths and legends rooted in a mother's determination to protect her child. So hopefully I can get to this before October 10th and give you all of my thoughts on it, but yeah, I'm really excited. Another book that I just happened to have a physical arc of, thanks to HarperCollins Canada, that comes out on October 10th is Wrath Becomes Her by Aiden Polydoros, and this is the author of The City Beautiful, which is a book I have heard some good things about. So this is actually historical fantasy. It's set in Lithuania in 1943, so you can imagine that it's set just after the war, and it follows a father who's going through grief. His daughter was killed by the Nazis, and he uses an ancient and powerful magic to create an avenging golem in her image, and that is heartbreaking and devastating. And it says Vera was made for vengeance. She is the Jew that Nazis cannot kill, but she is more than the wrath that her creator infused within her. And I've read a couple golem stories at this point, and they often explore the concept of, is the product more than its maker? Is the golem more than the person that created it? And I like that question when it is explored, and this one sounds like it's going to be obviously tackling some tough themes, but hopefully I get to it soon. It's not that long, and I will let you know how it goes. Something I want to read more of are witchy fantasy romances. I've read a lot of witchy rom-coms. I've read a lot of fantasy romances, but not something that combines the two, but one that looks so good is Of Magic and Men by Meg Aveline, and this is a witchy fantasy romance with a slow burn spice. I love a good slow burn, earth magic, a prisoner and guard romance, and a villain inspired by Maleficent. I mean, what more do you need to know? All of that sounds good. The gothic nature of this cover that does kind of look like a dark fairy tale, definitely something I want to read. I actually have an ALC of this next one from Libro FM, so hopefully I can get to that one as well. It's called Stars in Your Eyes by Case and Calendar. I saw a couple of friends listen to this already and absolutely adore it, and it would be a good contemporary to break up some of the other more fantastical horror stuff that's coming out in October. So this is a beautifully tender story of two grumpy sunshine fake dating actors navigating their love for story both on and off screen, and it says perfect for fans of Alexis Hall, and I just adore Alexis Hall so much. So this follows two actors. One is Logan, who is like Hollywood's bad boy, always getting into trouble, and the other is Maddie, who is like an up-and-coming golden boy, and they're both cast to star in this movie. And Logan says that Maddie has zero talent, and that causes a PR disaster. So they end up having to fake date to kind of save the reputation of the movie, and obviously they will fall in love. I know that this is on the shorter side as well, so that does sound like a really perfect book to break up some of the darker stuff that you might be reading in October. When I read historical, I do like a family saga, one that jumps between different eras of a family and kind of shows how you got to this place. And one that seems to do that is What We Keep to Ourselves by Nancy Kim. One timeline is set in 1999 and the other set in 1977. So it follows the Kim family, and in the 1999 timeline, all of the siblings are struggling to move on after their mother Sunny has gone missing for a year. And then in the 1977 timeline, we were following Sunny as she was first married and is pregnant and everything that she had been going through. And it says it explores the consequences of secrets between parents and children, husbands and wives. It is the story of what an unforgettable family's search for home when all seems lost, and a powerful mediation on identity, migration, and what it means to dream in America. So that sounds really, really good. After reading After the Forest, I realized that I do like something horror, more atmospheric, set in the woods, and this seems to do that. It's called Bittersweet in the Hollow by Kate Purcell, and it says Beware the Forest. That is a tagline. And this is YA, and it follows 4 sisters. A common theme I'm seeing as I'm talking about these books is that a lot of them do follow sisters, which I like. And it says 4 sisters with unusual talents investigate a mysterious disappearance in their secluded Appalachian town. So our main character of the sisters is Lyndon, and she enlists the help of her sisters to find out what is hiding in the forest and taking all of these girls before it finds her. And she starts digging for the truth about the moth-winged man rumored to haunt the Hollow, about her bitter rift with Cole, and even about her family. She must question if some secrets are best left behind. So yeah, exactly what I'm looking for right now. And Caitlin Starling has a new book coming out in October. She wrote The Death of Jane Lawrence and A Luminous Dead, and this one is called Last to Leave the Room, which is a sci-fi horror. And the main character in this book is Tamsin, and through a series of circumstances, she ends up in this basement and she finds a door that wasn't there before. She opens the door up and there's a doppelganger of herself, and she runs all these tests because she's a scientist and determines that this person is wholly human just like her, and obviously she needs to figure out what's going on. And the fact that it's horror makes that even more creepy to me, so we will see how that turns out. Moving on to October 17th, and this next one is probably my most anticipated book of this month because you know that I love this author. I talk about her stuff every time fall comes around, and this is A Haunting in the Arctic by C.J. Cook, who wrote The Lighthouse Witches and The Ghost Woods, 2 of my favorite books ever, and I recommend them every single year and I won't stop. And I'm hoping to add this one to that list of recommendations as well. So something has walked the floors of the Ormond for almost a century, something that craves revenge. Yes, revenge. So part of this book takes place in 1901, and it follows a character named Nikki who is aboard the Ormond, which is a whale ship, and it is attacked and dragged out into the middle of the ocean, and it's just her, the freezing ocean, and the crew, and they're all owed something only she can give them. And then we are set in the present, and the Ormond has been drifting across the oceans for decades. Its crew inexplicably vanished, its stories all still unknown. And it follows an explorer, Dominique, who is determined to find out what happened to this ship and find the ship in general, and she goes to a fishing village that hasn't been explored in 40 years. And obviously she discovers some things. So yeah, I just know I'm gonna love that. Nobody does atmosphere like C.J. Cook. I love that this one's set aboard a ship in the Arctic. So unique. Okay, something else Christmassy, and this might not mean anything to anybody else, but I'm excited about this. This is the 4th book in a Christmas Tree Farm murder mystery series. It is the series that introduced me to cozy mysteries. It is my favorite thing. I marathoned the first 3 books a couple years ago, got me so into the holiday season. And then it's been a couple years and a new book hasn't come out, and I've been sad about it, but when I saw Stalking Around the Christmas Tree was coming out, I screamed. I was so excited. It's gonna get me so pumped for the holidays. I love the punny title. I love this main character. She's having a bit of a romance with the police chief of this small town that she is in. Her parents own like a Christmas tree farm. She's opened an inn back there. Obviously people keep dying and she keeps getting wrapped up in all of the investigations. Her boyfriend gets mad at her every time, but she is stubborn that way and kind of infuriating, but I love her. So who dies this time? Let me see. So many people have died and been blamed at this point. Oh, this is interesting. This is different. You know, I like ballet, so this is about putting on the ballet, The Nutcracker. And a disaster strikes when Tiffany, the lead ballerina, shows up dead on a float during the parade, the Rat King's Mask nearby. So yeah, that is intriguing enough for me. But yeah, I just love this series. If you're looking to get into cozy mysteries and you like holiday reads, that is just, it's so good, it's so fun. So back to horror, and this is All These Sunken Souls. It's a black horror anthology. It's edited by Circe Moskowitz, and we are all familiar with the tropes of the horror genre: slasher and victims, demon and the possessed, bloody screams, haunted visions, and the peddlers of wares we aren't sure we can trust. In this young adult anthology, fans will get a little bit of everything they love and a lot of what they fear through a twisted blend of horror lenses, from thoughtful to the terrifying. So what you would expect from an anthology like this, and I'm really looking forward to it. There's monsters, apocalypses, zombie apocalypses, and Kaylin Bayron contributed to this. Liesl Sandbury, who's somebody I really want to read from. Joelle Wellington, who I just read it and loved a book from. So yeah, that sounds like a perfect anthology to read maybe one story a night and get really into the Halloween spirit. Okay, back to romance. I actually have an Alexis haul on this list. I actually forgot about this one. This is 10 Things That Never Happened, and this is the start of a new series from Alexis Hall, Fake Amnesia, Real Feelings, Real Problems. So this just sounds kind of ridiculous, and a lot of Alexis Hall's more contemporary romances are. It follows 2 characters, one who's a manager, like, sounds like Bed Bath & Beyond kind of thing, and an employee, and somehow the employee ends up having to fake amnesia. I don't know how that will all play out. You know, the amnesia trope's not normally my favorite, but I can't say I've ever read a book, especially a romance book, where one of the characters fakes amnesia. So I could love or hate that, but we will see. I will try anything Alexis Hall does, you know this. Then we have a new book from Adrienne Young. I still haven't read anything by her. I do own some. It's called The Unmaking of June Farrow, and it says that a young woman risks everything to end her family's century-old curse, solve her mother's disappearance, and find love. We have one book coming out October 19th that I just wanted to mention. It's an anthology, but it's more for the winter time. It's called The Winter Spirits, Ghostly Tales for Festive Nights. So it's just a collection of authors who come together to write these wintry kind of gothic, ghosty short stories for the holiday season. Some authors who I recognize that have contributed to this collection are Bridget Collins, Kieran Millwood Hargrave, Jess Kidd, Elizabeth McNeil, I love her books, Stuart Turton, I love again, Catcher in a Ward, I know a lot of people adore, so it seems like an interesting mix of authors. Of the ones I have read, not authors I would put together, but kind of makes sense. I will be trying that one. Moving on to October 24th, I just wanted to mention that the third book in Stephanie Garber's new series is coming out. I haven't read the first one yet, but I do own it. But the third book is called A Curse for True Love. So if you love that series, just to let you know, the last book, I think it's the last book, the third book at least, is coming out in October, so look forward to that. And then October 31st, we have two books. You would think that October 31st is Halloween and it would be a bigger release day, but for some reason I only found two that I thought were interesting, and the first one is The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. So this is historical. It is set in Jim Crow, Florida, and it follows a character named Robert Stevens Jr. as he's sent to a segregated reform school that is a chamber of terrors where he sees the horrors of racism and injustice for the living and the dead. So from what I can tell, that this is actually inspired by the life of one of Tananarive Due's relatives who the family never spoke of, and it pieces together his story and the tragedy that he faced at the infamous Dozier School for Boys. So obviously this is going to be deeply personal to her, and Tananarive Due is an author I've heard fantastic things about, and hopefully by the time this comes out I will have read something by her already and will want to dive into this one. And then we'll end this video with a YA thriller that looks ridiculous and just kind of fun. It's called Rosewood Hunt by Mackenzie Reed. If you like those kind of books that are about inheritances and a competition to get the prize, you might like this one. It follows a character named Lily whose grandmother passes away, and they realize that a large part of her fortune has gone missing, and then Lily gets a cryptic letter from her grandmother that sends her and her friends on this kind of treasure hunt to find the prize and win the money. So sounds silly, but it could be fun. This is actually a debut novel, and apparently it has irresistible intrigue, captivating suspense, a swoony friends to rivals to lovers romance, and heartbreaking betrayal. So could be ridiculous and fun. But yes, there goes my voice. I hope that I put some new books on your radar. Let me know if any of these are on your TBR already, or if I missed books coming out in October that you're really excited for. Which book on my list is one that you want to read ASAP? Tell me all the things in the comments below. I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks again for the support. Bye for now.